The main character of our story is Anna Miller, a 35-year-old single mother and devoted nurse whose life is centered around her only 8-year-old daughter, little Violetta. Life has never been easy for this single mother from New Orleans since she found out about her pregnancy in her second year of medical school. All her plans for the future disappeared, forcing her to give up everything in order to become a mother and provide a good life for her child. But as if giving up her career wasn't enough of a challenge, Anna faced tragedy again when her marriage suddenly broke up. Little Violetta was only a year old when her husband Brian, whom she had been dating since high school, decided to leave without explaining the reasons, and refused to take any responsibility for her and their daughter. Anna was left alone with a child in her arms, a lot of responsibilities and growing debts. Other mothers might have desperately sought help from social services or family to survive, but Anna Miller was not like other mothers. When Violetta turned 2 and became more independent, Anna decided to return to school in order to find a better paying job and do what she really likes. However, instead of returning to medical school to pursue a career as a doctor, she decided to enroll in a much easier and shorter nursing program that would allow her to start working at the hospital and take care of her daughter faster. So we come to the present moment in which our story takes place. Anna has been working as a nurse in a hospital for more than 5 years and has managed to create a stable and loving home for herself and her beautiful daughter Violetta, who is now 8 years old. Late on Thursday evening, Anna had just returned home after a full day of work at the hospital. She came home with a feeling of heaviness in her shoulders from fatigue. The day was difficult for the nurse, although in fact there was no day that would not be difficult. Being a nurse is a truly sacrificial profession, and when she came home, she only had the strength to stretch out on the couch and kiss her daughter goodnight before falling asleep. "Oh, thank you, God, my sofa, my beautiful, comfortable sofa," she said, plopping down on it, which was now more of an oasis. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, trying to relax and forget about the difficulties of the day. However, her brief moment of peace was interrupted by the excited voice of her youngest daughter Violetta, who ran to her mother. "Mommy, you've come. Mommy!" The girl screamed, jumping on top of her, filling the room with her infectious joy. The mother, despite her fatigue, turned around and hugged her little girl with tenderness. Her hug was like an injection of energy and love that made all the stress of the day disappear. Then Louise, Anna's nanny and close friend, entered the room and greeted her warmly. "I'm so glad you came, Anna. I'm done for today." She was already in bed, but when she heard that you had come, she ran to you. I couldn't hold her back. You know she can't sleep unless she gets a goodnight kiss. "It's all right, Louise, don't worry, thanks for everything, I'll put her to bed myself," the nurse replied, smiling at her daughter. Then she picked up the girl and carried her into the room, while the nanny said goodbye and left the house. On the way to the room, the mother began to tell her daughter about her day at the hospital. Violetta loved the stories her mother told her about the people she cared for and the various illnesses she encountered in the hospital. These were not conversations for an 8-year-old child, but Violetta had been listening to her mother's stories about her work since childhood, and for her they were as fascinating as any children's fairy tales full of magic. "How was your day, my love?" Anna asked her daughter as she put her to bed. The girl, settling into bed, enthusiastically replied, "It was great, Mom. Today at school we studied the structure of the human body. When I grow up, I want to become a doctor like you." The woman smiled affectionately and kissed her daughter on the forehead. "That's great, honey, but I'm not a doctor, I'm a nurse. Although both nurses and doctors take care of people and help them recover. It's not a problem, Mom. I still want to be like you," Violetta said with determination in her bright eyes. Anna laughed softly and stroked her daughter's cheek when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She felt that something very bad was going to happen, which would completely change her life and the life of her little girl. Something that no one could have foreseen, and that will leave you speechless. Anna began to feel very ill. She was sick, her chest and throat ached, and she felt her temperature rise sharply. She felt tired and had severe muscle pain all day, but attributed it to lack of sleep and work at the hospital. However, what was happening to her was much more serious and had nothing to do with the nurse's overwork. She tried to hide her discomfort in front of her daughter, who looked anxiously at her mother, noticing the changes in her behavior, but Anna could not hide what was happening. She started coughing violently and became so dizzy that she almost fell to the floor. Seeing what was happening and fearing the worst, Anna instinctively pulled away from the girl to protect her. She didn't want to infect her, but she also didn't want to make her suffer by seeing her in this state. "No, don't come near, dear, Mom is sick. I think I caught a fungus in the hospital," she explained in a weak voice, coughing. The girl's face expressed concern, and she asked, "How you feel, Mommy? I can help you." The frightened girl asked, looking at her mother, who was on the verge of fainting. "Mom's just a little dizzy, honey, sore throat that I don't know. I'll do tests later to find out for sure. But you have to stay here and sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, you'll get sick too and won't be able to go to school. Do you understand me?" The woman knew how much her daughter loved school and that she would never want to miss classes due to illness. Violetta reluctantly agreed to stay in bed, worried about her mother, and obeyed her orders to go to bed and wait for her return. However, the next day around 8 in the morning, when the girl got up and went down to the kitchen to have breakfast with her mother, as it happened every day, she was in for a surprise. Her mother was not there. In a panic and horror, Violetta ran into the bedroom and found a heartbreaking picture there. Her mother lying in bed, looking terrible. She had a high fever and was shaking. The girl was very scared, but her mother asked her to get a thermometer from the bedside table to take her temperature and check her condition. However, the thermometer did not give good news. She had a fever of 107 degrees. Anna urgently needed to get to the hospital. Her life was in serious danger, and she knew it. "Honey, pick up the phone and call Louise. Quickly, she will help us," Anna said with difficulty. After receiving a call from Violetta, it took Louise only 15 minutes to arrive at the house and find her friend on the verge of death. Louise was horrified by her friend's condition and tried to help her by following all the instructions that Anna gave her from the bed, but her condition only worsened by the hour. At night, Anna still had a fever above 40 degrees, coughed incessantly and began to experience hallucinations due to pain and fever. Louise was even more scared and decided not to delay any longer and called an ambulance to take her friend to the hospital for specialized care and find out what was happening to her. "Please hurry up, my friend is dying," she told the doctors in a panic, realizing that her friend's condition was deteriorating, and she began coughing up blood. Upon arrival at the hospital, doctors discovered that Anna was suffering from severe pneumonia, and despite all efforts to treat her, her condition was only getting worse by the hour. Violetta was devastated and crying as she looked at her mother lying in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, but nothing could have prepared her for the terrible blow that awaited her. Anna Miller, a strong and devoted woman who worked tirelessly as a nurse to give her daughter a better life, was unable to resist the strange illness that suddenly overtook her, and after several weeks of illness and stay in the intensive care unit, she passed away. At the age of just 8, Violetta was left without a mother and her world collapsed. The news of Anna's death spread quickly through the hospital, leaving everyone in shock and despair. Colleagues, nurses and doctors who knew and admired her gathered in groups, sharing tears and words of sorrow for Anna. No one understood how the situation could have reached such a point, and how such a healthy and strong woman could so suddenly pass away. Despair also gripped Anna's relatives, who arrived at the hospital after receiving the tragic news. Her parents, relatives, and even her ex-husband and Violetta's father, who had remained aloof from her and their daughter until that moment, came to pay their last respects and support the girl at such a sad moment that I am so sorry, dear. Your mother was a great woman, she loved you more than anything in the world, and I am sure that wherever she is, she will take care of you," the girl said, trying to comfort her. But Violetta had her own opinion about her mother's death, and although she understood perfectly well what it meant to go to live in heaven, she could not accept that her mother was gone forever, and continued to wait for something to happen that would indicate her return. Louise took over the funeral arrangements with the help of Anna's family, and the next day everyone gathered to say their last goodbyes to her. It was a small ceremony full of symbolism and love. The atmosphere was filled with sadness and longing, and at the center of all this grief was Violetta, a little girl who cried at her mother's coffin, unable to contain the pain and confusion of losing her mother in this way. "No, she's not dead. She's not dead," the girl repeated as tears streamed down her face. Louise tried to comfort her and took her to the back room of the morgue, away from prying eyes. There she hugged the girl and tried to find words of comfort for her. "Darling, I know that you feel very bad, but your mother is gone, and we have to accept it," Louise said lovingly, hugging the girl. But Violetta was not going to give up. The girl cried and shook her head in denial, unable to accept the terrible reality that hung over her. "No, no. Mom couldn't leave. I know she wouldn't leave me, she wouldn't leave me alone. She promised me." "You can't understand it," she was crying, tears streaming down her face. After the girl calmed down a little, the nanny took her back to the main room so that she could say goodbye to her mother for the last time, as the coffin was soon to be taken away for burial in the family crypt. Violetta, standing in front of her mother's coffin, immediately plunged into memories and happy moments spent with her. She did not want her mother to leave, but at the moment when the lid of the coffin began to close, and the girl looked at her mother's pale face for the last time, realizing that she would never see her again, tears flowed down her face, and she screamed as loudly as she could, "Mommy, please do not leave." Her voice was full of sadness and despair, but then something absolutely incredible happened that left everyone in mute shock. The coffin began to sway slightly, almost imperceptibly at first, but soon it became more noticeable, and all the people around were stunned and puzzled by what was happening. The coffin lid, which had been closed so carefully, began to slowly rise, as if someone was trying to open it from the inside. Family and friends froze in surprise, as it could be that Anna's coffin was moving. Louise instinctively stepped back, and the others standing next to the coffin, ready to carry it away for burial, also hesitated. Various explanations began to appear in people's heads, but in fact everyone was thinking the same thing. The only person able to lift the lid from the inside was the deceased Anna, who, as it turned out, was not as dead as they thought. Violetta, her eyes full of tears, slowly walked up to the coffin, her expression full of curiosity and hope. She put both hands on the coffin and bent over, pressing her ear to the cold wood. At that moment, she heard the quiet, almost inaudible whisper of the dearest person in her life, "Get me out of here, I'm alive. Get me out, please, Violetta, dear, Mom is here." The girl jumped back with wide-open eyes in surprise and screamed loudly and clearly, "My mother is alive. Get her out, get her out. She's talking to me." The nanny, without hesitation, lifted the lid of the coffin to check, and indeed, Anna was there. Her eyes were open, she was confused and suffocating. Her hands were shaking, her breathing was weak, but it was certain that she was alive. Panic gripped everyone, but action was taken quickly. Anna was rushed to the hospital, where a team of doctors and nurses gathered to give her first aid and try to understand what happened and answer the question that everyone was asking at the time: how could a woman who was considered dead come back to life? The news of this event instantly spread throughout the city. Journalists flocked to the doors of the hospital in the hope of getting information about the nurse who had been resurrected. Louise, as a loyal and protective friend of Anna and her daughter, tried to keep the curious and the press away, but the story was too big to remain a secret, and the whole truth came out. But what was the truth about Anna Miller's non-death and her sudden terminal illness? You will find out very soon that it turned out that Anna contracted a strange disease while caring for one of her patients, a condition known as Lazarus syndrome, which makes those who suffer from it seem really dead. What makes Lazarus syndrome even more intriguing is its reversibility, which fortunately brought our heroine back to life just in time to avoid a mistaken burial. Although there are few studies and explanations about this condition, it can be reversible, but the process of this has not yet been studied. Although science does not yet have definitive answers, all doctors were unanimous on one thing. Little Violetta and her insistence on not saying goodbye to her mother and trying to wake her up somehow led to her mother coming back to life, bringing her out of the state of complete unconsciousness in which she was. After her shocking near-death experience, Anna returned home safe and sound, but with a story that seemed taken straight from a fairy tale. The hospital recognized her dedication to her work and rewarded her with a significant salary increase, given that she had worked for many years without any salary revision. In addition, Anna also received a generous severance package for all these years of continuous work and the obvious physical and mental consequences that it brought her, which allowed her to finally pay off all the accumulated bills that had been in her desk drawer for so long. With the improvement of her financial situation, the woman was able to find some peace and relief from the stress that had plagued her for so many years. Over time, things gradually got better for her and her little girl, and life regained some semblance of balance and normality, and hope replaced the shadows of the past that had oppressed her for so long. So, this extraordinary story of a simple nurse showed everyone that even in the darkest and most inexplicable moments, incredible things can happen if you just believe in it. Did you like this touching and amazing story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this, subscribe to our channel or watch other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your attention.